Reports from across the Atlantic suggest that for the first time since he entered the White House, President Reagan has got himself into a major political mess, with the prospect that his Secretary of State, George Shultz, is soon to resign in protest. The cause of this predicament is the revelation that the President authorized the secret supply of weapons to Iran, in violation of his public commitment that no arms would be provided to that regime, which is officially detested by the United States. In tonight's special edition of This Week, we enter the underworld of the international arms trade. We uncover a murky deal that defies international law and government policy. And in the process, we reveal the kind of company that the White House has chosen to keep. Julian Mannion reports.
In January this year, while the Reagan White House was planning its secret deals with Iran, an extraordinary undercover operation was getting underway in New York.
Special Agent Dennis Doyle, today's date is January 10th, 1986. The time is now 3:50 p.m. New York time. Cyrus Hashemi will attempt to call Sam Evans at his home in London, England. His telephone call is being monitored at the Beekman Towers Hotel.
From his suite in a New York hotel, a well-known Iranian businessman made a call across the Atlantic to an American called Samuel Evans.
Hello, Sam?
Yes, hello, Cyrus.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, and you?
Okay, very good.
I've just heard from Nico a few minutes ago, and he's had a telex in from Israel. They have 200 T-54/55 tanks with 105 millimeter cannons. FOB Israel, $1 million each. They have tank gun barrels. They've lowered the price a bit on the 24 units of the 155 millimeter howitzers at about $700,000 each. That's one.
The man who made the call was Cyrus Hashemi, an Iranian banker turned arms dealer who gradually put together a network that could supply modern weapons to Iran. At the core of the Hashemi deal was advanced American military technology, the missiles and components that now dominate the modern battlefield. Missiles like the AIM-9 or Sidewinder, used in air-to-air combat, or the AIM-7, designed to attack targets on the ground. American power is based on this kind of technology, and US governments have always tried to control the sale of weapons and the spare parts that keep them working. It was President Carter who ordered an embargo on arms sales to Iran. At the Iran war front, even the mullahs have finally realized that the Quran alone is not enough. In 5 years of war, Iranian volunteers have thrown themselves against the superior firepower of Iraq. They've lost at least 250,000 dead. The war is at stalemate, with Iran hungry for the modern weapons to achieve a breakthrough. Cyrus Hashemi's group plotted to sell hundreds of millions of dollars worth of weapons to Iran. Among the men involved, Samuel Evans, an American lawyer living in London, Nico Minardos, a Greek involved in the shipping business, Israel and Guri Eisenberg, Israeli businessmen from Jerusalem, and General Bar Am, Israeli war hero turned arms dealer. To all the others in the conspiracy, Hashemi appeared to be the classic Iranian middleman, but none of them guessed at the web of intrigue and deceit that they were entering when they started doing business with him. Today, Cyrus Hashemi lies buried at the George Washington Cemetery in New Jersey, following his sudden death in July. The story of his arms deal will soon be told in an American courtroom. It's a tale that really begins with Hashemi's role in the first Iranian hostage crisis, a role still classified as secret by the Central Intelligence Agency. His brother claims that Cyrus was involved in secret deals between America and Iran.
He had supplied Iran with some amounts of different spare parts, and also, insofar as to the best of my knowledge, some inflated boats, engines, and so on and so forth. But that was with the full understanding of the United States government at the time, because he was an important figure in the hostage situation. And because of that, they were letting him export his articles to Iran.
We have confirmed that during the occupation of the US Embassy in Tehran, Cyrus Hashemi was one of 12 secret go-betweens used by the Carter administration in its attempts to free the hostages. A member of the Carter team has told us that Hashemi proposed a swap of arms for hostages, but says the offer was never taken up. When the hostages were freed, Hashemi kept up his contacts with the Khomeini regime.
You should always remember that in Iran there is not just one faction ruling the country. You know, you have factions within factions in Iran. Hashemi had, you know, very solid relation with one of these factions, and they used him in many deals, especially in oil business. And Hashemi was the one who, you know, produced some contract for the Iranian. While selling of Iranian oil was too difficult, he was the one who always found somebody ready to purchase Iranian oil. And he gained lots of money out of this business.
Hashemi was one of the middlemen who made a fortune from the Iran-Iraq war. But as the recruits marched to the front, his life also became more difficult. In 1984, Hashemi was charged by the US Justice Department with violating American law by shipping military supplies to Iran. By the autumn of last year, Hashemi was living in London, unable to visit the United States, where he had much of his wealth. It was then that Hashemi began to discuss what was to be his final arms deal with a man who now faces trial in New York.
What is your comment on that? What do you say?
Samuel Evans is an American lawyer who normally lives in London. He works for the world's best-known arms trader, Adnan Khashoggi, with whom he has had a close working relationship for more than 12 years. In September last year, Evans and Hashemi began to discuss the idea of doing a big arms deal with Iran. Evans had heard that American policy on sales to Iran was about to change, and he regarded Hashemi as a man with solid contacts in the Iranian regime. What he didn't know was that Hashemi was about to betray him. In November, Hashemi contacted the Justice Department in New York and told them about the arms deal he was proposing to do with Evans. Justice replied that the deal was unauthorized and illegal and invited Hashemi to cooperate. Hashemi agreed. At Customs headquarters in New York, plans were made for an entrapment or sting operation in which Hashemi would pretend to buy weapons for the Iranian government. In return, Hashemi was secretly promised that the charges against him would be dropped and he would be allowed free access to the United States. The Customs Service provided Hashemi with a suite at the Beekman Towers Hotel. It was equipped with a hidden video camera which recorded the details of the arms deal that now began to unfold. On the left is Cyrus Hashemi, on the right Samuel Evans. Off camera, a third member of the group. Hashemi cheerfully reminds them of the money they can now expect to make.
I think you're expected to make maybe $50 million in this deal. $10 million, $20 million.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Beautiful. We get us some reduction on those prices.
My group is not making that money, doctor. But,
But somebody's going to make a lot of money here.
well...
Don't let Evans make all of it.
Now it comes out, yes. No, that's nobody.
The third man in that meeting was Nikos Minados, a Greek-American involved in the shipping business.
Very good, strong company. So I have no...
Once a Hollywood actor, he now watches himself on the videotapes that are the basis of the US government's case against him.
I don't say things unless I'm quite... when I say I believe, I'm almost 100% sure.
Dr. Hashemi was pressing us of the need of defense equipment immediately for his country, claiming that he would lose all the funds. He was in jeopardy of his own security. He had promised his government that he would be able to deliver those things. And unless we could do something soon, he would be in trouble. He approaches us first, and he wants to do it, and we're not discussing if it is legal or illegal. What we're discussing is we will try to see how we can obtain those defense equipment.
In the end, it was to Israel that Evans and Minados turned in their search for dealers who could supply the kind of weapons that their Iranian buyer seemed to want. They got in touch with a company that has offices in the commercial center of Jerusalem. It's up on the 8th floor and describes itself publicly as an insurance company. In fact, the Eisenbergs also trade in arms, and the people in their office don't exactly welcome strangers.
Okay, he asked you to get out, please.
Sorry, what did you say?
He asked you to get out, please.
Who are you?
I'm Danny.
Danny who?
Danny, it's enough.
Yes, are you a member of the Eisenberg family, or?
No, I'm just working here.
It was from these offices that two members of the Eisenberg family negotiated to sell American weapons worth more than $300 million. The deal landed them in prison in New York. In New York, Guri and his father, Israel Eisenberg, are now out on bail, which totals more than $2 million. They were arrested carrying briefcases stuffed with contracts for military equipment, ranging from transport planes to missiles. Taking the documents at face value, the Eisenbergs are the first link in a chain which led to the Israeli Ministry of Defense. The Eisenbergs agreed to meet us on condition that only their lawyer, Mr. Neil Hurwitz, spoke on camera. In front of the Eisenbergs, he explained their view of the case.
The transaction was to involve the sale by Israel of arms owned by Israel that it wished to sell. The supposed ultimate buyer of the arms was Iran, a country with which Israel is not at war with, and Israel indeed had and continues to have certain old arms that are apparently obsolete for sale.
In her struggles for survival in 1968 and 1973, Israel has heavily depended on supplies of American weapons, often paid for by American grant aid. A lot of equipment has been used or destroyed in Israel's wars, but the Israeli Ministry of Defense has gradually built up a stockpile of surplus weapons. When Israel was threatened in the Yom Kippur War, the Americans sent weapons by the shipload. This one carried Skyhawk fighters. Today, 46 Skyhawk aircraft are featured in the latest sales catalogue published by the Israeli Ministry of Defense. They are among scores of other dated weapons that Israeli salesmen attempt to pass on to foreign buyers for sorely needed cash. The sales drive is supposed to be controlled by US laws, which require permission from Washington for any transfer of American-made weapons. But even before the latest crisis blew up, there were unproven allegations that Israel had sold US military components to Iran in secret. It was against this background that the Hashemi deal began to unfold. The Eisenbergs say they were only the first layer of middlemen in the deal.
Eisenbergs, through a company, retained an individual who is a certified agent of the Ministry of Defense, and that certified agent is authorized to deal with the Ministry of Defense in connection with any sale of arms by Israel. However, in that connection, before the Ministry of Defense in Israel will allow any sale to go through, they of course want to make sure that the purchaser of any such weapons has the money in place, certifiably, so before they determine, that is, the Ministry of Defense determines that in fact it will sell those goods.
As the Hashemi deal developed, the Eisenbergs sent an accountant to New York. At the Beekman Towers Hotel, the accountant, Itzhak Hebroni, duly appeared in front of the Customs Service camera. He is sitting on the right. The accountant had only one basic question for Hashemi. Was the money really there?
The problem is with the evidence of funds.
Right. Right.
No. We cannot get through. I mean, this doesn't depend on us. I mean, we heard the name, everything is all right, but it doesn't depend on us. We cannot get through to culminate the deal, to make more progress unless we have evidence of funds. And the evidence of funds is actually very simple. I mean, it doesn't cost anything.
The US government now turned to the Chemical Bank of New York for an extraordinary solution to the problem of how to provide proof of funds. The Chemical Bank has confirmed to us that in response to an American government request, they pretended that Cyrus Hashemi had an account with them containing $1,000 million. In fact, there was no money here at all. The next step was for Cyrus Hashemi to send representatives to Israel. In March this year, he sent Sam Evans and Nico Menados to Jerusalem, both of them firmly under the impression that they were on a genuine buyer's mission. They stayed at the Hilton and met first with the Eisenbergs and the registered agent of the Ministry of Defense.
The primary thing that they were interested in selling were the Skyhawks, and that's where the main interest was because of the need to buy the new F-16s. They have to pay for them. That was a marvelous chance for them to sell them.
How many Skyhawks were they talking about, in fact?
46.
And with a price tag on each one of approximately what?
I think the total contract was about $600–700 million.
What else were they interested in selling to you?
Well, they talked about equipment that they were manufactured in Israel. They talked about 5 C-130s, that the Israelis had put new wings on them and so on, and general items, defense items.
This appeared to be an important deal as far as they were concerned because of the sums of money involved.
Of course, yes. And the people involved, meaning Dr. Hashemi and so on.
The registered agents said to represent the Ministry of Defense were from a company called ProMil. We found them in a shabby back street in Tel Aviv. In a signed contract, ProMil undertook to secure the agreement of the Defense Ministry to sell more than $300 million worth of weapons. Mr. Weingart? there's evidence that the chain of contacts went beyond pro-mill to the Israeli government itself. The chain started with Cyrus Hashemi. It ran through the men he sent to Israel, Evans the broker and Nico Minados the shipper. They dealt with the Eisenbergs, their first point of contact, and through them with pro-mill, registered agents of the Ministry of Defense. But apparently the chain did not stop here. Zvi Reuter is mentioned on video by Minados as somebody he saw in Israel, and Reuter is the head of CBAT, the arms sales wing of the Israeli Ministry of Defense. The ministry has a reputation for an aggressive arms sales policy, and we have discovered that they have a powerful incentive. Money earned from selling surplus equipment stays with the ministry in a special fund additional to its budget. But ministry officials categorically deny that they had any involvement in the Hashemi case. I put this to Nico Minados.
Look, I was told from the beginning that the United States is behind this deal. So Israel is doing the business that both the United States and Israel wishes to do.
Why did that visit to Israel serve to convince you of that?
Well, because I don't believe that the state of Israel will do things of that caliber without discussing it with the United States. I don't think there is tremendous difference between the state of New Jersey and the state of Israel.
The Israeli Ministry of Defense would not put up an official spokesman, but we were able to interview the man who carried out what they said was an internal inquiry into the case. General Menachem Meron has recently retired as Director General at the ministry. I put to him the arms dealers' version of events.
They are lying, flatly lying. There is no involvement of the Ministry of Defense. There was no involvement of the Ministry of Defense. They have never had any authority to speak on behalf of the Ministry of Defense, neither directly, indirectly, or in any other form. If they are saying that, it's flat lies.
What are the standing instructions on arms sales to Iran?
They have not changed for the last years or so. The answer is no. We do not sell weapons to Iran.
Under any circumstances?
Any circumstances.
How clear and unambiguous are those instructions, sir?
Very clear and very unambiguous. Nobody can truthfully be misunderstood about it or misunderstand those regulations. They are very strict and very severe.
Since General Meron gave that interview, some members of the Reagan administration have said that the Israeli port of Eilat has been used to send arms to Iran, though there's confusion over whether those shipments were authorized by Washington or not. The logbook of a seaman from a Danish freighter, the Elsa TH, shows evidence of one mysterious voyage in June this year to the Iranian port of Bandar Abbas. On his return, the worried seaman confronted the owner of the vessel.
It was normally, he said to me. And then I said, it's not normal. And that, you know that it's not normal. Then he said to me, there's only one thing. You must not tell the Iranian people that you come from Israel.
But did you ask him what you had been carrying on this voyage? What was in the containers?
After I asked him what is real was in the containers. And then he said to me in a quiet voice, he said to me that it was arms.
The seaman snapped a container with its numerals painted out, being loaded at Eilat. The Elsa TH took the same route that Minados was planning to use.
Why were you certain that the Israelis themselves would permit a ship to be loaded at Eilat, bound for Iran?
That's where the goods were going to leave from.
I mean, did you discuss this specifically with the Israelis? Did you have their say-so to make that arrangement?
Well, of course.
And no surprise was expressed that a ship would leave directly from Eilat for Bandar Abbas?
Why should there be a surprise? I mean, I'm trying to see why do you think there might be a surprise?
Did you not face any difficulties in arranging this, for example, with the Israeli authorities?
Why face difficulty? It was their goods that they were shipping out of the country.
Cyrus Hashemi's sting operation was going well. Plans were now laid to lure the Israeli arms dealers to London as a first stage in securing their arrest. But even Hashemi was surprised when Evans reported that an Israeli general had joined the team.
Who is the general with him? Do you know him?
I met him today for the first time, General Baram. He's, been in the Army for 30 years. He's now retired and part of the advisory group to the Northern Army Command in Israel.
Right, Baram is B-A-R-U-M?
It's two words. It's B-A-R, and the second word, I think, is O-M or U-M, is the way it transliterates from the Hebrew.
Right. Well, I was a bit concerned, because the general in the Army, I don't know.
In New York, we found the general, who's now living in hiding while awaiting trial. General Avraham Baram is one of Israel's most respected war heroes.
That is not fair.
General, we're very sorry to trouble you.
That is not fair. The British not behave like this. It is not. Take this away. Take this away. Take this away immediately. Take this away. Not in this way.
In Israel's wars with her neighbors, General Baram became a legendary military commander. The man who in 1968 trapped an Egyptian army in the Mitla Pass. Since retirement, he's become an arms dealer licensed by the Ministry of Defense. I asked General Meron what Baram was doing in the Hashemi deal.
I know him personally. I knew him personally, still know him personally. He was a very good soldier. He was a brave soldier and a good commander. But from what I read about him latest, I don't believe that he's a good and sound businessman as well. He may have been dragged into it, I don't know.
Why do you think General Baram said immediately after his arrest in Bermuda that he was on official business and made what appeared to be a thinly veiled threat to blow the whistle if you people didn't get him out?
If he threatened, why didn't he blow up the whistle? Why didn't he blow the whistle? He could have blown the whistle if he had any whistle to blow. I believe that he doesn't have any whistle to blow.
In early April this year, a Citation II executive jet took off from the airfield at Biggin Hill in Kent. The plane had been chartered by Cyrus Hashemi and paid for by the US Customs Service. On board was General Baram heading for a secret meeting in Paris. It was here at the luxurious Plaza Athénée Hotel that Cyrus Hashemi set out to finalize the deal. The idea was to agree the final terms before contracts and letters of credit were signed. In one of the meetings recorded by the US Customs Service and attended by Cyrus Hashemi, Samuel Evans, and Baram's partner William Northrop, the general made an astonishing offer to sell scores of Soviet-built tanks to the man he believed was a genuine Iranian arms buyer.
All the tanks, all the spare parts, everything was given me. Around 350, 355 tanks. Change began to America, and in addition to that, another 60-something, 69, 62 tanks. Everything there, you simply going to take it out from our division, put it on the boat, and the boat. One division and one brigade. That you can put your people inside and go through.
The Eisenbergs were also in Paris. I asked their lawyer what they believed to be the Israeli government's role in the transaction.
Israel would have done whatever it saw fit in connection with the sale of these goods. For all I know, Israel, when the deal were consummated, that is, contract signed, money put up by Iran, would have contacted someone in the United States and said, we intend to sell, can we do it? Or would not have contacted. But Israel would have done what it saw fit in connection with this matter. This transaction could not have taken place but for the direct involvement of the seller of the goods. The seller of the goods, the supplier of the goods, is the state of Israel, not my client.
Back in Manhattan, Cyrus Hashemi had one final problem. He had been asked by the US Customs Service to bring the arms dealers to America so they could be arrested and charged under American law. In a taped phone call, Hashemi tried to persuade Guri Eisenberg that the contracts should be signed in New York.
Well, the signatures actually will probably have to be done, you know, most probably have to be done in New York.
As I told Sam, we cannot go to sign such a contract in New York. It must, from our side at least, be signed not outside of Europe. It's a question of security reasons, and we have been instructed by our authorities that it's forbidden for us to go to the United States to sign this contract.
I don't see, you know, what is your problem as far as coming to the United States and, you know, have a meeting.
There is a problem by the international law.
By what?
Some problem. We don't want any problem to raise, not in the public, not in the newspaper. I think it's not be very pleasant, not to us and not to you.
The people involved in this transaction said that they'd been advised by your security services not to go to the United States because they might find themselves liable to arrest. Did any such advice take place?
Rubbish, nonsense. Nonsense.
Why would they say it?
You're asking me, why do they do, I would ask, what did they do, what they did? And you're asking, what did they say things? They say things to get them out of the trouble that they found themselves in.
Bermuda was finally agreed as a compromise destination, and on April 21st, the arms dealers were arrested by the Bermudan authorities who had been asked to intervene by the US government. Later, Samuel Evans and the Israelis were sent to the United States and charged with trying to sell more than $1 billion worth of weapons to Iran. A few hours before the arrests in Bermuda, Cyrus Hashemi invited Nico Minados to his suite at the Beekman Towers Hotel. Hashemi had told Minados that they would travel from here to join the others.
Everything will be fine. I hope so.
Also present was a customs service agent, masquerading as Hashemi's assistant.
From this end, it will be. See, I came in with summer clothes thinking I left 95-degree weather. I'm going to Bahama, Bermuda. It must be the same. So, okay.
Not necessarily be, you know, sunny in Bermuda. It's always, you know.
It's not going to hurt me.
No, I'm just saying, you know, sometimes.
No, I understand.
As soon as Minados left the room, he was arrested by the US Customs Service. The sting operation was over. Cyrus Hashemi was alone. April the 21st this year was the last time that Cyrus Hashemi appears on the videotapes of the US Customs Service, at the end of a case that looks even murkier now than it did then. The motivation of Evans, Minados, and the Israelis they worked with appears from the tapes and the videos to have been, very simply, money. At no point in the deal was the issue of the hostages ever raised. But we have been informed by sources in New York and London that the Hashemi sting operation does fit into the bigger picture. According to these well-connected sources, the White House last year authorized a certain group of arms dealers to arrange the supply of a limited quantity of weapons from Israel to Iran. News of this operation swiftly leaked out and encouraged other groups to form and attempt similar deals. Adnan Khashoggi is alleged to have been a central figure in the arms ring that had some kind of official sanction. In the past, Khashoggi's arms deals made him probably the richest man in the world. But recently, it's been reported that he's in financial trouble. Sam Evans has been Khashoggi's lawyer for more than 12 years, and as his private diary shows, remained in close touch with Khashoggi, while both of them were apparently negotiating separate but overlapping deals to transfer arms from Israel to Iran. It is possible, our sources believe, that one deal was designed to slip through on the coattails of the other. It is suggested to us that one purpose of the Hashemi sting operation was to mop up some of the unauthorized arms merchants who were beginning to swarm around the honeypot of deals with Iran. And concerning Cyrus Hashemi himself, this week has learnt dramatic new facts that tie the mysterious Iranian to the present crisis and reveal him as not just a double agent, but a triple agent. Cyrus Hashemi's principal American lawyer was Elliot Richardson, formerly Attorney General under Nixon and a man of high reputation. Richardson has told us that at the start of this year, he attended a meeting at the Pierre Hotel in New York with Hashemi and another US lawyer who was handling Hashemi's relations with the Justice Department. According to Richardson, the question of whether arms shipments would help to release the hostages was discussed. Richardson then introduced Hashemi to a contact at the Central Intelligence Agency. Richardson says that he does not know what happened after that, but we have learned from other sources that Hashemi was closely linked to the CIA and was apparently the middleman in a genuine exchange of messages between the United States and the Islamic government of Iran. But at the back of Hashemi's mind there was fear. Fear that the sting operation had left him with powerful enemies. But none of this was apparent when 3 weeks before his death, he played tennis for the last time with his son in the United States. Then, on July 16th, in London, Hashemi fell ill and was taken to the Cromwell Hospital with what were described as heart problems. Doctors diagnosed leukemia, and by July 20th, Hashemi was partly paralyzed. The following day, he died. The cause of death was described as myeloplastic leukemia, a rare form of the disease. There was no evidence of foul play, just the suspicions of the family.
He was 47 years old. He was a very good sportsman. He wasn't a drinker. He wasn't a smoker. There was no reason, and medically we had no reason whatsoever before his death to believe that there was anything wrong with him. Absolutely nothing. And that is why it has nothing to do with just being my brother. I mean, a person has been, to my thoughts and to the best of my knowledge, a person has been killed. And why should the authorities stop investigating?
Today, the life and sudden death of Cyrus Hashemi remains one of the many issues that now haunt the tangled relationship between America, Israel, and Iran.
The time is now 3:50 p.m. New York time. Cyrus Hashemi will again attempt to contact Sam Evans at his home in London.
Signed these agreements. We signed an agreement. We gave them a letter of credit for the total amount.
Engine is the engine for the C-130 Hercules per unit, which means that they are almost used.
The underworld of the international arms trade, and assuredly a story that is not yet laid to rest. Indeed, it's reported from America that many more such deals are about to bubble to the surface. It begins to look as though Iran may come to haunt Ronald Reagan as it once haunted Jimmy Carter. In next week's programme, I'll be reporting on what is a most sensitive and potentially explosive issue, how the schools of today teach the citizens of tomorrow about race and racism. Until then, next Thursday, that's all from this week. Good night.